All right, everybody, welcome back to Binge Guide, the next show where we help you figure out what to watch next. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Victoria.
And Victoria, today we're diving into a film that's already generating a lot of buzz. The new adaptation of Bonjour Tristesse, Françoise Sagan's famous novel from way back in 1954.
Yeah, this is not just, another book-to-movie situation.
Yeah.
This is Dergachew-Bowes' first time directing a feature film. And it's already premiered at TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, back in September.
Back in September, and it's coming out next month.
Yeah, in May.
So what makes this deep dive so interesting is this new film is revisiting a story that was pretty scandalous back in the day.
It was.
For its modern themes and for how audacious it was, for the time.
Yeah.
So we're going to explore what makes this story resonate even today.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's start with the source material, Françoise Sagan's Bonjour Tristesse.
Okay.
For those who may not know it, what was it about this book that made such an impact back in 1954?
Well, you have to remember that Sagan was only 18 when she wrote this.
Oh, wow.
So she was incredibly young. And the book just really kind of took the world by storm.
What do you think it was about the book that made it so popular?
I think it was her voice. It was so distinct and kind of detached in a way. And it dealt with themes that were pretty taboo at the time, youth desire, melancholy.
Yeah.
And it was very frank, about relationships and societal norms. It was pretty shocking for a lot of people back then.
So this was the 50s, right?
Yes, the 50s.
Post-war?
Exactly. Post-war conservatism was still very much the norm. And so this book kind of offered this glimpse into a more, freewheeling lifestyle.
Right, more liberated.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And even though it was ultimately a complicated existence, it really captured people's imaginations. And what's interesting is that the book hasn't faded away. It's actually become a cornerstone of French literature.
Wow.
I know it's still read and analyzed today, which is pretty amazing.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
So now fast forward to 2025. We have this brand new adaptation. What can you tell us about the director Dergachew-Bowes and the vision she's bringing to this well-known story?
Well, what's really interesting about Dergachew-Bowes is that her background is in essay writing.
Oh, interesting.
I know, isn't that cool? And so she's bringing that kind of sensibility to her first feature film.
I see.
And she's described her take on Bonjour Tristesse as like a new feminine and contemporary reading of the novel, which I think is really fascinating because it suggests that she's really delving into the characters' inner lives, their emotions and the power dynamics between them.
I see.
It'll be really interesting to see how a female director interprets these nuances compared to maybe how a male director might have in the past.
Right, it's a new perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
So the setting of the story of the Côte d'Azur is like a character in itself.
It is, yeah.
How did they capture that in the film?
Well, they actually filmed it on location in Cassis in the south of France.
Oh, wow.
Which is really cool. And from what I've heard, they really emphasize that sun-drenched, carefree atmosphere, the kind of place where you just want to relax and soak up the sun.
Yeah.
But of course, anyone who's read the book knows that this beautiful setting is really just a backdrop for all the complicated emotions the characters are going through.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how they use that visual contrast,
Exactly.
the bright light and then the kind of darkness underneath.
I see.
Principal photography actually finished last May. So they've had plenty of time to work on that, perfecting that look.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the film really stays true to the core themes that made the novel so impactful.
Yes, definitely.
What are some of those key themes that the film explores?
Well, obviously there's the coming of age theme,
Right.
That loss of innocence, and also the complexities of relationships, especially between women.
Okay.
It seems like the film really delves into the games people play, the seduction, the power struggles, the vulnerability, and it also reflects on femininity and what it means to become a woman in a very, complex and nuanced way.
So it's not shying away from those tough topics.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It seems like Bowes really wants to capture that duality that Sagan was so good at portraying in the novel. This surface of lightness that hides a much deeper psychological reality.
Right. A lot going on beneath the surface.
Exactly.
So it was interesting to read that it took Babe Nation Films 3 years to get the rights to the novel.
I know, right?
That's dedication.
It is. It shows how much they believed in this project.
So who else is involved in bringing this to the big screen?
Well, Babe Nation Films is producing it with Lindsay Tapscott and Katie Burden-Nolan as the key producers. And then there's Elevation Pictures, Barry Films, and Cinenovo.
So a lot of people are involved.
A lot of people, yeah. And Film Constellation is handling the distribution rights.
Okay.
So it's definitely a big international effort to bring this story to audiences all over the world.
That's cool. So let's talk about the characters. They're so crucial to the story, starting with Cécile, played by Lily McInerney.
Yes.
What can you tell us about her and her portrayal of this iconic character?
Well, Cécile is the main character. She's either 17 or 18, depending on the source you read, and she's spending the summer with her widowed father, who is described as charmingly irresponsible, which I love.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I know, right? And Lily McInerney, you might recognize her from Palm Trees and Power Lines.
Okay.
So it'll be really interesting to see how she takes on this role, because Cécile is such a complex character. She's carefree on the surface, but underneath she's intelligent and yearning for connection.
Right.
But on her own terms.
Her own terms, yeah.
Yeah.
So her father, Raymond, he's played by Claes Bang.
He is.
He's described as a bon vivant. What does that tell us about him?
Well, it tells us that he's someone who enjoys the good things in life. You know, he's charismatic. He loves pleasure. He's got a real zest for living.
Okay.
But of course, he's also widowed, and he tends to have these fleeting romances. Claes Bang is great at playing characters who have this kind of surface charm, but also a lot going on beneath the surface.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how he portrays Raymond's maybe deeper insecurities that might be driving all of this.
So then we have the arrival of Anne, played by Cloë Sevigny.
Yes.
She really shakes things up, doesn't she?
She does. She's like this big disruption to their carefree summer.
What's her story?
Well, Anne is a sophisticated and very disciplined woman.
Okay.
And she was a close friend of Cécile's late mother.
I see.
So she kind of represents order and responsibility, which is the opposite of how Cécile and Raymond are living.
Right.
Chloë Sevigny is always amazing. She always brings this intensity to her roles. And in this one, apparently, she has this really scathing wit that you see glimpses of beneath her reserved exterior.
Oh, wow.
So I think she's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good casting choice.
I think so, too.
So rounding out the main characters, we have Elsa, played by Naïlia Harzoun, and Cyril, played by Alyosha Schneider. What are their roles in this summer story?
Well, Elsa is Raymond's current lover at the beginning of the summer.
Yeah.
She's young and carefree, and she brings this kind of energy and passion to the film.
I see.
And Naïlia Harzoun has been getting great reviews for her performance. Apparently, she really brings the character to life.
That's great.
Yeah, and then we have Cyril, who is described as this gentle, poetic kind of guy, and he becomes Cécile's first love interest. Yeah, it's very sweet. But their relationship becomes more complicated as the story goes on because Cyril ends up getting caught up in Cécile's plans.
Oh, so he's kind of an unwitting accomplice.
Exactly, yeah.
So with all these characters in this beautiful setting, what's the main conflict that drives the plot of this new adaptation of Bonjour Tristesse?
Well, it all starts when Anne arrives, and she represents this possibility of stability for Raymond.
Okay.
You know, she could be a good influence on him, and maybe even a mother figure to Cécile, but Cécile sees this as a huge threat.
I see.
You know, she's afraid of losing that special bond she has with her father.
Right, she doesn't want things to change.
Exactly. And she's also afraid of growing up. You know, she wants to hold on to that freedom and lack of responsibility.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a classic teenage fear.
It is, yeah. And so Cécile decides to take matters into her own hands. She comes up with this plan to get rid of Anne.
And what happens?
Well, the synopsis says that it's an incredible journey of deceit, lust, compassion, and unconditional love.
Wow.
But ultimately, Cécile's actions lead to tragedy and disillusionment.
Sounds intense.
It does, yeah. And it makes you think about the consequences of our choices.
Yeah.
You know, the things we do when we're young can have lasting effects.
Right. Our actions have ripples.
They do, yeah.
So visually speaking, what kind of atmosphere has the director created for this film?
Well, it's supposed to be very visually stunning.
Okay.
You know, a film is bathed in light, which really emphasizes the beauty of the setting and the kind of intensity of the emotions. And Dergachew-Bowes is known for her very nuanced and delicate writing style. And it seems like she's brought that same approach to directing.
I see.
There's a real focus on those small details, the sounds of summer, The scrape of butter on toast, the sound of a knife cutting an apple, the sound of a kiss.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very sensory, and it creates this kind of dreamlike quality like we're looking back on this summer through a hazy memory.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
So the cinematographer and the costume designer, their work seems to be really important to the film.
It is, yeah. The cinematography by Maximilian Pittener is getting a lot of praise. People are saying that every frame looks like a painting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he uses light and shadow in really interesting ways to reflect Cécile's psychological state. And then the costumes by Miyako Balidze are also amazing. She's taken that classic 1950s style and given it a modern twist, which really reflects the characters' inner contradictions. They look elegant and put together on the outside, but underneath there's a lot of turmoil.
That's a really clever way to use costume design.
It is, yeah.
And what about the music?
Well, the score is by Leslie Barber, and it's supposed to be this really beautiful blend of classic French sounds with modern elements.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's meant to be subtle but impactful, enhancing the emotional moments without being too overwhelming.
So it's not going to be like a big orchestral score.
No, it's going to be more understated and atmospheric.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So the film premiered at TIFF last year. What was the critical reception like?
It's been a little bit mixed, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everyone agrees that it's visually stunning. The colors, the light, the scenery. But some critics have said that the emotional impact is a bit flat. Which is interesting, considering the source material and the talented cast.
Yeah, I wonder why that is.
I know it's hard to say without seeing it, but maybe it's because the pacing is a bit slow. Some reviewers have said that it feels a little bit leisurely, which might make it hard for some viewers to really connect with the characters' emotional journeys.
I see.
But IndieWire actually gave it a pretty good review. They called it a sharp offering.
Yeah.
And said that it adds to the mystique of the original novel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they particularly highlighted the performances of Naili Harzoun and Cloë Sevigny.
Yeah, they're both great actors.
They are. So overall, it seems like the film is worth seeing, but maybe go into it with the expectation that it's going to be more of a slow burn, a film that unfolds gradually.
So one of those films you have to just sit back and let wash over you?
Exactly, yeah.
So there was some discussion about the film's perspective, was there?
Yeah, one review said that it's not really a feminist film, but more of a feminine film in the sense that it explores the internal lives of these women without judging them.
I see.
And another critic compared it to the 1958 adaptation by Otto Preminger and said that this new version feels like a more considered effort. Like it's trying to do something different.
Okay.
So maybe this film will appeal to a different audience than the 1958 film did.
Well, I'm definitely intrigued. I want to see it for myself.
Would you?
So when can we see it?
Well, it's coming out in theaters on May 2nd here in the U.S.
May 2nd.
Yeah, distributed by Greenwich Entertainment, and then international distribution will follow shortly after that. There's talk of a summer release in Italy, which I think is perfect.
Yeah, very fitting.
And then, of course, it'll eventually end up on streaming platforms.
So lots of ways to see it.
Exactly.
Well, as we wait for May 2nd, it sounds like Bonjour Tristesse is offering a really beautiful and thought-provoking new way to experience this classic story.
It does, yeah.
It's tackling some really big themes. Youth freedom, the complexity of human relationships, and all of that against the stunning backdrop of the French Riviera.
I think it's going to stay with people after they see it. It's going to make them think about the choices we make and how they shape us.
Yeah, the bittersweet nature of growing up.
Exactly.
All right, well, Bonjour Tristesse hits theaters May 2nd, so mark your calendars. We'll keep you updated on all the latest release news.
Sounds good.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive on Binge Guide, the next show.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
We'll see you next time for another look at what you should be adding to your watch list.
Bye.